Are we ready to roll, Mark?
We're ready to roll.
Oh, I'm feeling like I'm a little under interrogation today with these rather bright lights. And I'm feeling a little bit that way because I have been asked, am I biased? And the answer is, no, I am. Yes, I'm not. Here's the thing. I'm not sure any human being has the capacity at any point in time to be 100% unbiased. Now, of course, there would be occasions, maybe the odd one, but I would have thought the majority of the time it simply cannot happen. The same is true for the YouTube world that we live in. We have all started somewhere, haven't we? And when I mean starting somewhere, I mean, let's say, for example, your camera choice. We've all had a camera choice that started somewhere. And whether it was a camera handed down by a family member, or whether it was the school that you went to was leaning one particular way, you started where you started. And that in its very self, regardless of anything, is a bias, even if you did not create this bias. And that's okay. It's natural. It's human. So I kind of think when we're thinking about this space and we're thinking about YouTube and we're thinking about cameras, we've got to understand that everybody's got to have a baseline, whatever that baseline is. And that baseline is going to be the very first camera they used, the very first camera they were given, the very first camera that you bought. That's the baseline. So I want to address directly this notion of saying someone is biased, and far worse than that, and I'm gonna make a community service announcement at this point in time that I know some of you are gonna love. Yes, you are, you're gonna love this. Fanboys. Now, if anyone out there wants to call me a fanboy, the community service announcement from this point on is I am simply not going to respond. Further to that, I think anybody that calls somebody a fanboy, well, they're being lazy. If you want to litigate and articulate your case, then I would absolutely love to hear that and see that. Give me a paragraph on why you think it's so. But to just go, you're a fanboy. I think you're a bit of a fanboy. That's not litigating anything. It's not engaging in discourse. I'm not learning. I'm not being smarter. You're not being smarter. The reality is, if you write something down, it actually helps you get through your thoughts. And when you work through your thoughts, and you try to litigate what you're thinking, it might actually help you process and go through the pros and the cons of the thought that you've come up with. So, if you go the fanboy option, I might delete the remark, or I might ignore it. But that's where I'm up to at this point in time. I ain't no boy. I'm going to be turning 50 next year. Call me a fan man if you want. At least that's funny. Fanboy, that's out on my channel. Just want to let you know. So back to bias. As I said, there's a baseline for all of us, isn't there? There's a baseline. We just cannot ignore that baseline. And for me, I started with a Pentax camera back in 1985. And I had a Pentax camera because it was given to me. It wasn't because I was a fanboy. I was a fan of the fact that I was able to shoot with a 35mm camera. That was what was exciting. I was able to make pictures. That's what was exciting. And then, once I had enough of my own money, I went to a camera store about 1985, 1997, 12 years later, and I looked at Canon and Nikon, and I made a choice of Nikon in 1997 due to ergonomics. It was a choice. I looked at how it worked. It was a round dial at the back on the Canon versus a dial like this for the Nikon. And one suited me better. I've talked about that in other videos. It was a choice. There was no fandemonium. I made a choice based on my hands, my thumbs, and the way that I photograph. when anybody chooses a camera, we are making a choice based on us. Our eyes, our hands, the speed that we shoot, the strength of our arms. There are a whole lot of reasons that we make these choices which have absolutely nothing to do with megapixels, frame rates, in-body stabilization, 1.2s, f1.2s versus f1.8s versus f1.4s. There's a whole baseline of reasons that we make these choices. So bias, let's go back to where we started. Bias. Well, bias, no. My perspective is simply this: there's absolutely not a single manufacturer in the world, not one, that gets this stuff right. Nobody gets 10 out of 10. It simply never happens. And when one is making a review or when one is talking about a lens or whatever, it is impossible to cover every data point of anything. It's completely impossible. Thus, it might sound like one is biased because one says, oh, this lens is not good because it does this. But in that same statement, in that same sentence, it's not possible to say, yet this manufacturer does all this. Thus, they're still very awesome. There's simply not time or opportunity, nor is it necessary to keep saying in every single moment, negative, positives, negative, positives. It's unnecessary and it's inefficient. We all need to be comfortable enough that the choices that we have made are the ones that we love. And there will be pros and cons about absolutely everything. And to prove it, I'm going to start by talking about some Nikon cons. I'm not going to come up with all of them. This is just an example. And I'm very happy to make a whole video about Nikon cons. You let me know in the comments below. I don't care how many cons there are, because I get the results that I need, because I've got big hands and I shoot left eye and I fit this camera within my use case. And it fits in my use case for lots of reasons before we even get to specifications, like I've been shooting Nikon for 23 years, like I own about 8 SB flashes that go on top, like I have 14 lenses in F. Why would I just throw that all away when there's something like $30,000 worth of glass there? These are all reasons that come into play before I even look at the spec sheet. It's not bias. It's more history than it is bias. It's more economic reality, harsh economic reality, than it is bias. And think about that before you start typing. It's important. It's important. Let's be mature here, all right? How are we going there? This is the halftime intermission mark. The studio's looking good. I like the fact that you're set up in the weeds over there. Is that, how's that working with all that weed?
It's great to be out in the country.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you very much. This is what we call the backlot here at Irwin Photography. Warner Brothers would be jealous. All right, let's go back to the main event. So let's talk about some Nikon cons. Well, let's face it, I don't have my Z6 because it's right there, and I don't have my Z7 because it's right there. Of course, the one slot is a con for many people. No question. Now, in life, one of the best measures of a human being is how do we overcome negativity? So yes, it's a con, but how do we overcome it? And often there's a way. Can it be overcome? In this case, there are ways, or you accept it. Are there other cons? Well, I don't like Nikon making lenses that do this. I really don't like it. Now, one thinks about what is the compromise? Why does a manufacturer do this? And they mostly do it due to size and weight. That's why they do it. So then the user has to make a decision. Are they interested in small size, small weight, and in some cases optically less superior? Or are they wanting the best optical outcomes, but they want to pay for the weight and the size and also the cost? But personally, I would like Nikon to never do this ever again, personally, but they will. Focus, if we're talking about Sony, Canon, even Fuji now, and perhaps other manufacturers, Nikon's focus is not up in the stellar levels that their focus is. And when I say that, I'm not talking about DSLR, I'm talking about mirrorless, face tracking, eye tracking, all that stuff. Yep, it's not up there. It's not up there with the others. That's absolutely true. Will it get there with the current Z6 and Z7? It's hard to say. Their processors might have, as in the CPUs within the cameras, they may well have reached their limits. Might not. We might have to wait for the Z8/Z9. Who knows? But yes, if automatic, high-speed, birds, sports, 3D style tracking is important to you, either stick with your Nikon DSLR or wait for the Z8 or don't buy a Nikon. That is a negative. The thing is, can you work around it? Well, it depends on what type of user you are. I don't shoot those things, so working around it, I don't even have to work around anything. The Z6, the Z7 and the Z50 are beyond my needs right now. They're beyond it. I tell you a camera I have a problem with. If you want to talk about focus, my Hasselblad medium format camera. Focus, terrible. But it's not designed for sport. But even focusing on slow things, not so great. It is an old camera. It's the H4D, and that camera, I don't know, it must be something like 5 or 7 years old these days. Slow. It's just the way it is. I didn't buy it for speed. I bought it for image quality. See, you make a choice. An inordinate amount of money. I could have bought 2, 3, 4 Sony A9s for the price. But the Sony A9 doesn't give me 60 megapixels in a medium format. That's a large sensor in that. It's a real medium format in that camera. So you make a choice. You buy it for a use case. That's what it's all about. Nikon has plenty of cons. I mean, for example, some would argue they came to mirrorless too late. I would certainly argue that. They came to it too late, so I bought a Sony because I wanted a hybrid camera to do what we're doing today. I wanted it to be able to focus on my face without having an operator having to watch the camera. My D850 couldn't do it, so I went Sony. There's another con. And another con is the D850. It's a very expensive camera. Doesn't do face. You can't shoot without an operator and it work. So guys, there's no bias here. I'm happy to call it just as it is. That's the whole point of this channel. I just want to call it as it is. And for example, I made a video a couple of videos ago where I was largely talking about Nikon lenses and why the f1.8s, and I made one point about the Canon 70-200, which is this style. It's not like this lens. It's far more expensive. But it's this style of lens, and I just simply said that I think a lens like this is compromised due to potential ingress of moisture and dust, as well as any lens that's in this position, I believe is more prone than a lens that is like this. It's just going to be mechanically more fragile, more prone to damage. I made that one point, and that elicited a number of responses, which was bias. I'm biased and I'm a fanboy, and I'm like, and I don't know, unless somebody can show me or tell me how a lens that's in this position is going to be tougher than a lens that's fully sealed, just from an impact perspective. I would have thought that's just a simple matter of fact. I'm very happy to say that that Canon lens optically, I haven't looked into it deeply, but optically it may well be one of the best lenses ever made. Absolutely true. It may well be. I wasn't talking about its optical prowess. I was talking about vulnerability under hard use. Imagine you are a military photographer and you are in the dirt and the sand in Iraq or wherever. You don't want a lens like this. You just don't want to think about it. You don't want to have to worry about it. Or you're in a jungle. You're in a jungle, you're in the Amazon. Or you're somewhere in Africa and you've been like that dude who hid in the middle of a pond waiting for the lions to come so he could get that perfect shot of them having a drink. And he was literally, I think, up to his neck. In those sort of conditions, you don't want a lens like this. You just don't. You just don't want to have to think about it. Because Canon, Nikon, Sony, whoever, they're not going to tell us exactly how good it is. They never do. So you've just got to make your own choices. Is this design better or worse than this design? from a toughness perspective, well, me as an end user, I make a choice. And that choice is, my belief is, not as good. So hey, it's not biased. I'm sure that lens is optically awesome. And of course, as I said, you can't talk about everything a manufacturer does whenever you make a statement like, that lens is bad, but Canon is good at this, and that. Of course they are. They wouldn't be selling the most cameras and haven't been selling the most cameras for like 25 years if they weren't. So everyone relax. We get that. We know that. My intention with this channel is to simply call it as I see it. Yes, I've been using Nikon for 23 years because I made a choice before digital cameras even existed. And I will continue to make exactly the same types of choices. I own a $30,000, $40,000 Hasselblad for a specific set of reasons. I own an A7R and an A7R III for a specific set of reasons. And I own my Nikon cameras for a specific set of reasons. I've also bought a number of Canons over the years, and they were bought for very specific reasons. At the end of the day, it's not about the gear. I would be really happy if all the fist desk pounding ended, to be honest. I just want to talk about it and go, this is how I feel, and this is how it works, and isn't this fun, and isn't this awesome? That's what I want to do. And sometimes something will be slightly different to something else. And as humans, we always want something to win. I'm not really interested in winning. I'm just kind of going, well, this lens might work better if you're outside in the dirt, and this lens might work better if you're inside, not in the dirt. It's up to you. It's up to your use case. Anyway, wanted to share with you my thoughts on fanboyism and bias. I look forward to the robust comments below. As always, it's been so good to see you. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe, please share, please like, and tell me what you think. What do you think? Thoughtful people, I'd love to hear what you think about this topic. Could we ever have a channel that is just about free thinking without beating each other up? I'd love that. I'd love that so much. All right. See ya. Is the interrogation over?